Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
I love it when we get together, Tom, because you talk about things that people are thinking about and try to process and use to move their lives forward. But sometimes we get confused unless somebody presents it that way. You are an amazing success strategy coach. Tom Marino joins us. Hi, Tom.
How you doing, Steve? It's great to be back.
Yeah, it's great to have you back on here. I want to say congratulations on the article that you just had published on wellness.com.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, it's exciting. It's my second one on wellness.com. And actually was also picked up on Professor's House, which is another website with a lot of great articles and self-help and business and all of that. And both the articles picked up by both. So it was great.
Yeah. No, that is exciting. And that is a huge website with a lot of credibility. And that's why you're here. Because
Absolutely.
So why don't we talk about that article? Look, that's really going to lead us into our topic for today.
Absolutely right. So the article, Steve, was about adrenalizing your self-confidence. Okay. And, I had done a research article about I read a research article about, the impact of COVID and quarantine on people's self-esteem and their self-confidence. And it was really interesting because every social media platform had an increase during the lockdown, right? Because what were people doing? People were scrolling through social media, staying connected with people because you couldn't see people during quarantine and all of that, right? So social media went up, but it reduced people's self-esteem, right? The people that were going through quarantine, that were having a good time, they were excelling, other people were not, right? So there was this huge split in our society across the world, frankly, right? There's, the more you view what were people being able to do versus what I couldn't do. And, there was, we were all in different phases across the world when we were being impacted. So it really changed everybody's pictures and images and everything on social media. And it really got me thinking about how we are so influenced by what's out there on social media and how that really plays a significant role on people's self-confidence. And I have a lot of clients that, they look at other people's social media, they're trying to do something in the same line of business, and they become envious of these other people.
Mm-hmm.
And it depletes their own self-confidence. And it changes how they feel about themselves. And I was like, no, we've got to change that. We've got to be aware of what influences us.
The sad part about that, Tom, is the majority of what is being put out there in social media isn't really always true. We want people to think that everything's great, I am succeeding, everything's fantastic. On the back end of it, probably not so much.
Right. Exactly. And, we talked about self-worth, a couple of weeks ago. Self-worth, self-confidence, they're all very closely related. We've talked about imposter syndrome, right? A lot of people that start businesses that have a level of expertise, they don't always feel that they're supposed to be doing this stuff. And that comes directly back to self-confidence and self-worth is, you've got to know yourself and be in a place where you trust yourself. And that's how I essentially define self-confidence is, how well do you trust yourself? Because if you can trust yourself to do whatever it is you need to do, you're going to have a higher level of confidence. When you start to doubt, when you have those situations where you're doubting, where you experience a not so successful moment, not a failure, but when you experience a not successful moment, you start to reevaluate, do I trust myself to keep doing this stuff? And the person who's self-confident will say yes. The person who's not self-confident is going to say no. And that's where we have to ask ourselves that question. Do I trust myself that even if I fail, even if I don't do what I need to do I trust how I'm going to respond to that? And that's what builds your confidence. Self-confidence is about competence, right? You often see your level of competence as a way of determining your self-confidence, right? So if I'm competent at something, if I'm competent at a skill, or I'm competent, and proficient at something, my confidence goes up, right? My confidence goes up in coaching people when I hit the right thing, right? But when I don't hit the right thing and someone doesn't get what I'm saying, it makes me question my own competence and therefore then my confidence. But it's really where do you control it from?
Interesting point, because it illustrates how our self-confidence is always going to be like this.
Mm-hmm.
Like even in just a session with somebody, or talking to a client, you hit some high points. Yeah, things are really great, and then yeah, but we really need to fix that. So in a 1 hour period, your self-confidence could be going like this.
Yep.
Maybe not that kind of a drastic, but it could be kind of like this. And it's perfectly normal, but
Right.
I think we need
Well,
to talk about it.
I think that we need to understand that there's situational confidence, right? A new situation that you've never been exposed to, you're not going to have a lot of confidence about it because you don't know what the experience is. You don't know what you're going to trust about it. You don't know how it's going to unfold, but you have to trust that you will get through it, that you're going to experience it, and that you're going to be able to respond to it. And you're going to, know yourself enough to put yourself in that new situation. Maybe you researched it a little bit, or maybe you found out more, but you're entering the situation with a little bit more self-knowledge or period knowledge. And then you can really trust yourself with what you know to see if that comes through or not, and if that's successful or not.
Because I always say, and I own a small business. I always say I'm never going to do something unless I know it's going to go well. And so maybe that's a good thing, but maybe that's a bad thing, because it sounds like not going to take a chance on something. But really what I mean is we're never going to take on something, a project, whatever it might be, unless I know it's going to go well. I'm not going to even take that risk with somebody.
Right. That's part of your stickler coming up, Steve. That's your perfectionist, right? It's like, why?
All right, you're going to call me out. I'm going to let you call me out. I just wrote a proposal and put it off for a week.
Yep. Well, it's the perfectionist, right? Because it's got to be done perfect.
And it wasn't that I didn't, done this project for other people, but this was a higher level one. So I was like,
right.
Yeah, I want to make sure it presents itself in the light that I just get it done and move it on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. And what I want people to recognize, and the first thing that I talk about in the article is you have the control over this by determining your locus of control. And we talked about this when we talked about procrastination and how sometimes where do we see our control? And our control is either coming from us or it's coming from outside of us, right? It's either externally focused or it's internally focused. And people who have a lot of self-confidence are more internally focused. They're not as easily influenced by someone, right? I can look at somebody's picture that may be, or I can look at what somebody in my line of business is doing and say, wow, they got somebody I saw had a podcast that's in the top 0.5% of podcasts. And I go, well, he's been a coach for 20 years. He has almost 400 episodes of his podcast. He already has all that stuff. I could choose to be envious of that and say, no, I'm not going to be envious of it. I'm going to celebrate his success. And and I know where I am right now. And I'm not even where he is. I don't even live in that time zone. He lives in a totally different time zone than I do. But if I don't have a internal locus of control, I don't feel confident. Because if I let that situation say, oh, why isn't my podcast doing that well? Or why isn't my show doing that well? Or why don't I have as many followers, right? We can go through this self-deprecating full cascade down into the abysmal pit of pity party. Or you can look at it and go, okay, great for him, good for him. That's going to be me one day. I'm going to have a podcast in the top 0.5% one day. That's what I'm going to work towards. But being confident and internally focused, and your locus of control being internal, you're going to be confident to be able to do that.
But that doesn't mean, with this one example, that doesn't mean that that guy with the X number of podcasts is a fantastic success strategy coach. Doesn't at all. It just, he took a different direction a while back, and that's how he built up that particular momentum.
Right. And we're different, and good for him. I'm very happy for him. I was excited. I even commented, said congratulations. But that's where somebody who doesn't have confidence goes, oh, really? He thinks he's so great, right? Oh, is he better? Is he better than me? Yeah, he probably is better than me because he has this. It's got nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of people do. A lot of, and especially in the entertainment world, we see this all the time. You know, I work with a client that's in entertainment right now. He's trying to succeed and achieve and get recognized by people in LA. And he's putting himself in situations, but he's not putting himself in enough situations, because when he sees somebody else who's doing the same thing that he knows and they're succeeding, he goes, how come it's so easy for them? I said, how do you know it's easy for them? But he totally is like, well, then I guess people don't like me. I said, no,
Uh,
they just have a look that that person, that the person looking at them appealed to. And that's why they got that success. So you've got to keep putting yourself in front of people that look at you and say, eventually I'm going to be grabbed by the right person.
should you be comparing yourself to other people?
Nope. And that is a great point, Steve, because one of the other things I say to adrenalize your self-confidence is to stop comparing yourself to other people. Stop comparing yourself. Stop looking at Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and seeing how great other people's lives are, because they're not as great. They only put out there what's great.
Yep.
You know, I often refer to Facebook as fake book, because it's not real. It is not real. There, and that's not to discredit people who go on there that are genuine, because I listen, when I post genuine. I don't post, but I'm talking about a situation, or I'm explaining something,
Right.
or I'm teaching something. My approach to social media is very different, and I share things from my life that I'm doing, right? Because people are interested in you as a person. But don't compare yourself to somebody else. You know, we live in a very jealous world. We live in a very envious world. And social media has escalated that envy and has reduced our self-esteem and our self-confidence and made us not feel worthy enough. And the key is, and I say this to all my clients, only compare yourself to who you were yesterday. Are you better than you were yesterday? Because if you're better than you were yesterday, keep going. And if you're not better and you don't like where you are, then what can you learn from yesterday and change today so that you can move forward? And that's the only comparison we should be making, is the comparison within ourselves, the comparison within who we are. And are we better today than we were yesterday? Because every single day we wake up, I say every morning, thank you for the opportunity to be here, to do better. Yesterday's done. Whatever happened, happened. But today I have the opportunity to do better and not make the same mistakes twice. But I only compare myself to who I was yesterday.
It's a lot of soul searching in that. And also, when you compare yourself to yesterday, my first thought is, what is yesterday? Is yesterday yesterday? Is it a year ago? Is it 10 years ago? You know, you got to put it all into perspective. But
Absolutely.
the common denominator is if you're doing better. I want to get back to comparing.
Okay.
Is it okay, Tom? And by the way, we're talking with success strategy coach Tom Marino, and you can find him at tommarino.com. Can you, or should you, look at others that are in the same field or same, call it, situation that you are, and pick certain things from them that you like?
Steve, it's like you're reading my mind today. It's like you're reading my mind. That's exactly what I encourage people to do. And I do it myself. I look at what other coaches are doing. I go, okay, I like that. I like that. And I like that. Thanks for putting that out there. Thanks for sharing that with me, because now you gave me an idea and I Tom Marino-fy it. That's what I do. And that's what we have to do. What we have to see is that people in our field, when we're working in a specific area, we look what other people are doing, and then we have to make it unique to us and work for us, because it's not going to work for us if we copy it. We can't copy what somebody else is doing, because we're not necessarily going to get the same results as that person. What we have to do is take in the information, digest the information, and say, okay, how do I make this align with who I am, right? That goes back to the value alignment piece, right? And that's part of loving yourself, is knowing your values and your belief. And that's the third step in adrenalizing your self-confidence. Confidence is learning to love yourself through what you value and what you believe about yourself, right? And if you can align your value with something you saw somebody else doing and you twist it a little bit, you make it work for you. You don't try to fit into it, because I think that's where people develop a lot of imposter syndrome, right? Imposter syndrome is all about being fake, right? I feel like a fake, a fraud, or whatever. And those people are typically copying what other people are doing.
Yeah.
They're not necessarily making it their own. And that's why the imposter syndrome gets in there, because they don't feel like they have enough confidence to do something innovative and unique on their own. Right. So, and that's how I developed my coaching program. That's how I did. I looked at what everybody else was doing. I took pieces from my training. I took pieces from other coaches. I see what everybody else is doing. And I recognized that I was doing the same 6 things with every client. And that's where the framework of my choice model comes from, is the 6 steps that I was doing with every single person. And because I had enough confidence to put it out there as that, it's the framework that I say can solve every problem that you have.
Wow.
Every true problem you have can be solved in my 6 steps of choice.
You know, I look at it this way, based on what you just said, that we're not copying, or we shouldn't be copying. We should be inspired
Right.
by something that you see, and maybe it'll generate an idea. It'll move you forward in some ways. And I feel that life is, we're going to school every day, every second. We're at school.
Mm-hmm.
What happens when you're in school? You're told something, you apply it to, what you do in your life and in your future life. And it's kind of like that. If you see somebody else doing something, it's like, yeah, I do like that. Let me see what I like about that, dissect it and see how I can apply it. But, to your point, make it your own.
Right. And I think that's where people, if you have an internal locus of control, you see that you can make it your own.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to just copy it, it's an external, because you don't have enough trust in yourself that you could do something the same way.
So you really need to know your purpose, why you do what you do, who you
Mhm.
are, a better sense of who you are, so that you can make it your own. Because if you don't know what your own is,
Right. Right. I mean, I didn't develop choice until last year, after almost 3 years of coaching.
Mhm.
Right. I was doing different steps. I had a different process. I had a little bit different, but it all connected. But when I really said, okay, how do I come up with something that's different, unique, and innovative for me? And it was like, okay, what do I do for every single person? And I wrote down everything that I did, and I go, okay, where's my acronym now for this? And that was the process of doing it, right? So clarifying your mindset, putting your head on straight, right? Understanding what you want. That's the first C in choice, is clarify. The second is harness your values and beliefs. Understand what you value, because you need value alignment in everything you do, right? You overcome obstacles. That's the O, right? What are the self-sabotaging behaviors? What are the blocks that you're experiencing? Okay, what fear now is getting in the way whenever you go to do something, or keeps you from doing something? Well, integrate that fear into your life. That's the I, right? Make it a friend and advisor. And then, okay, how do we go to the next step? Well, we got to make a plan. So we have to activate the change. So change activation is making the plan, setting the goals, and putting things into motion. And then the other thing is okay, how do I achieve my goals when everybody wants things from me? Well, you've got to establish boundaries. So establish is the E. And that's how, and if you use that framework, and no matter what you do, you're going to achieve success. So choice equals success.
So
Period.
powerful. Yeah. And you have the choice to work with that choice.
Exactly. And it's always about choice. And that's why I love using the idea of choice, because people forget that even when you don't make a decision or you don't make a choice, you are making one. You are choosing something, and you have to recognize that. And that's the fourth thing in improving your self-confidence, is accountability, right?
Yep.
You have to hold yourself accountable, right? It's a part of your mindset of the world happens to me versus the world happens for me, right? Because the to me takes on the victim, the martyr, okay? and it points blame at everything outside, right? External locus of control, pointing to the outside, blaming somebody else. Whereas the for me mindset looks at myself and says, what could I have done differently? How do I have to take ownership of my wrong. I have to take ownership of my right. And I have to hold my, we think of accountability in a very negative way. Okay. Accountability is owning it. Okay. Own your stuff. Own yourself. Have the integrity. Own it. Because if you can own it, you boost your confidence. When you don't own it, you start to quiver and doubt and you shrink in, and it's a disaster.
And when those situations present themselves, what did I get from this? What did I learn from this? What's my takeaway from this?
Yep.
And I tell everybody else that, it didn't happen to me. It happened for me. I go by that.
Yeah.
Took some time internally searching and figuring things out, but it's all good. It's a good thing.
Right. And Steve, to think, going back to like the whole ebb and flow of self-confidence. I mean, confidence ebbs and flows. And so does your consciousness, from to me to for me, through me, as me. You navigate those 4 levels of consciousness based on situations, based on experiences, based on all those things. And we do have time when our confidence is down. Yeah, we throw ourselves a pity party. We move into the to me mindset. We blame everybody else because we don't want to take accountability.
Or we do this and we message somebody like, can you believe what just happened? I can't believe that. Let me believe this person.
Exactly. I had a great mentor in my life that once said to me, he said, when there's a fire burning, what role did you play in that fire? What role did you play?
Did you put it out?
Did you make it? Did you make it go bigger? Did you enhance it? Or did you reduce it? What was your role in the fire? And that's holding the accountability, right? And you can literally walk into a fire if you have the confidence.
It really depends on what you're going to do. Because let's say you had a confrontation with somebody, and a lot of times it's passive aggressive. You walked into the fire. Right. You know what? More gasoline.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
But it all relates back to, where do you hold yourself accountable? And then the last thing that's really important for your self-confidence is surround yourself with positive people.
Yep.
Get rid of all those negative people in your life that don't serve you in a positive way.
So true.
Don't be surrounded by the people who want to see you fail. Be surrounded by the people who want to see you succeed. Because the people who want you to fail are going to foster that lack of confidence. They're going to foster that self-doubt. They're going to encourage the imposter, right? That's what negative people in your life do. People that are in your life that throw themselves a pity party all the time. Misery loves company.
Mm-hmm.
Don't give in to that. Surround yourself with positive people. Surround yourself with people who are going to build you up.
And they may not be intentionally trying to derail you, but because of their nature, it's the chain around your neck, pulling you down. I may have said this before, but I learned this in the last 5-6 months. You are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So think of those 5 people. By the way, we have a instant feedback question. This comes from Kerry, who's in Jacksonville, Florida. And you can reach us, instantfeedbacksteve@gmail.com. She says, I was bullied as a child and feel that it's why I lack a lot of self-confidence. Any suggestions how I can get past that?
Yeah, a lot of our experiences, especially trauma, and we've talked about trauma in the past and how being bullied and being traumatized in some way can really impact us and make us that victim. It can make us feel like we deserved it. It can make us feel guilty for even receiving it, and that there was truth in it. There was no truth in that bullying. That was that person's issue. That was somebody else's issue. They targeted you maybe because you didn't present yourself in a confident way, and you were easy for them to pick on. And because I was bullied myself. I was bullied my whole childhood. I was bullied.
Same here. I never knew that.
Right. And one day I woke up and said, the heck with them. Thanks for bullying me, because now you just made me stronger, right? And we have that choice to become stronger, to shift our locus of control. I said, I'm not going to let other people determine how my life is going to be. I'm going to determine how my life is going to be. And the thing is, I would encourage, Carrie was her name. I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Okay. I would encourage Carrie to really explore what you really believe about yourself. And if there are beliefs in there that you don't like anymore, start believing new beliefs about yourself. Start looking at what your belief system is. Start understanding what you value and what's important to you. And what are the things, I'm sure there's some things in your life that you're very sure of. You've got to go to the places where you feel your best, right? When everything feels good and aligned, imagine that time. What's good about that? What are you doing? What are you experiencing? Who are you with? Because typically when you're with the people that you're that are friends, that are positive people, you feel good about yourself in those company, right? Yep. And what exists in those moments? There are attributes that exist in those moments with those people. What are those attributes? Because those are things that you value. Those are things that are important to you. And then you can start building your framework. And if you're not sure how to do that, complimentary call, you get 30 minutes of my time when you sign up for a complimentary call. So go to tommarino.com, fill out the contact form, and I'm happy to have a conversation, and that's free. And if you want help building your self-confidence and become a client, then we'll do that. If I can help you in the 30 minutes, that's all that I would ask for.
In the last 30 minutes, we learned so much. Just, even just talking. And sometimes it's those things that you thought were true, but then this validated it. And that's a big part of it as well.
Right.
Yeah.
We have to look at the truth of things. A lot of things we think are not true.
Especially we talked about Carrie and ourselves in our childhood, that even being bullied, it's that those things weren't true. Unfortunately, it planted some seeds that you need to, maybe they're not good seeds and you got to flush them out and find new ones.
And be grateful for that bully because it made me stronger. That's how I look at it, right? Be grateful that I had that opportunity. As painful as it was, I don't think I would be where I am today if I didn't turn it around and say, it's not my issue, it's their issue, and they need to deal with that, and I can move on.
And I would even take a guess that situation made you more sensitive to what people are and feeling, and made you an empath, and that's why you're doing what you're doing today.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, bullies.
Yes, thank you. I mean, listen, we don't like them, we don't promote it, but it definitely builds our character, and those people are in our lives to teach us lessons.
Because it didn't happen to you, it happened
for you.
Tom, always great talking with you.
Same here, Steve. Thanks so much.
Thank you. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you can now listen live on the MyTuner Radio and online Radio Box apps for iOS, Android, and the Amazon App Store. Or check us out online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on onlineradiobox.com/US so you don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, I mean, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.